first published, and the song Charleston was released. Away from the water, musical entertainment was a speciality at the Oval. Concerts were held daily at the open-air venue. They certainly drew in the crowds. The Pavilion and Winter Gardens were another popular rendezvous and a symbol of the times. In 1958, they were still an important part of Margate life.
The heart of the resort's entertainment is the Winter Gardens, where in summer months famous orchestras and top-caliber artists appear. Thank you, Dickie. This car registration number is familiar. Not difficult to guess whose. Petula Clark, one of Britain's best-loved stars. She too is at the Winter Gardens Theatre. And they certainly do come in their thousands, together with the children who laugh at Punch and Judy, just as they did in the times about which I have just spoken. With 20 acres of holiday fun, Dreamland Margate caters for the most exacting taste in thrills. And though the rides are not everyone's idea of relaxation, they have been captured by the camera, so let's sit back and watch others enjoying themselves in their own particular fashion. They must be enjoying themselves, otherwise I'm sure they would think of other things to do. Even washing is quite enough for me. And in what better way could we end our film than at the firework display with its set pieces and atmosphere of continental fun and gaiety. Our film must have brought back memories for some, and for others, made them determined one day soon to visit Margate, Belle of Kent.
A few years later, a new film was needed to promote the attractions of Margate. The natural features and many of the man-made attractions remained unchanged, but fashions had moved on. In 1965, we were invited to A Date with the Sun.
Thousands of happy, carefree holidaymakers enjoying themselves beside the glorious sea and those marvelous miles of beaches in this famous 5 resorts in one. Here's our girlfriend. Her name's Kathy, by the way, in something rather more modern. But she's following an old tradition in coming here all the same. For Margate has been famous for holidays for over 200 years, and deservedly so. I'm sure you'll agree. It isn't just for big girls either. These youngsters are having a really wonderful time. It's safe bathing and plenty of golden sands. When you're this age, what more do you want? Sunshine, did I hear you say? Well, all the records go to show that Margate is the sunniest resort of them all, and I, for one, can well believe it. There's plenty to do, too. Take the trampoline, for instance. Well, you take it. I'm getting too old for that sort of thing. But it's wonderful for the figure, hers or his. Any more for the Skylark? Modern style? This is great fun. She can do 40 knots and she's jet-propelled too. I'm still talking about the boat, of course. Our girlfriend is taking a trip along the coast and around the harbour. What you might call a real circular tour. And she's enjoying it, isn't she? Do I see a familiar face? Ah, yes, it's Norman Vaughan. He was having a swinging time at the Winter Gardens Theatre with a host of other top-line stars. Near the Winter Gardens is the Cliftonville Lido, a very popular rendezvous with its swimming pool and theatres. Alongside the harbour is the entrance to Margate Pier with the Yacht Club's dinghy park. And not far away is the Kiddies boating pool. And then there's the town itself, lively and attractive. In case you need it, here's the information centre to help you with your holiday accommodation. The great thing about a holiday here is that you don't have to spend it all in the heart of Margate. At Cliftonville, as well as the other parts of the resort, the continental sun deck cafes project over the beaches. But below this sun deck, there's a rather peculiar activity going on. My goodness, what an enormous ball. Send for official holiday guide. Peter Bedford, Information Centre, Margate. And
In a previous series of In the Past, we showed clips of Ramsgate in Kent in 1954. Shortly afterwards, Valerie Spain of Ashford contacted the programme. She was one of 6 young bathing beauties featured in the film, and remarkably, half a century later, they're still friends. But just how did they come to be in the film in the first place?
From what I can recall, there was a competition to do with shop girls, and the local newspaper wanted to take a picture of a group of us on the beach, and they took several shots to enter in a local competition. We think we won it, didn't we, Joe?
Did, yeah, well, as they said in the paper, showgirls, shop girls, and there we were.
I can't remember that. God, yeah. The carnivals came along, and we'd also, a group of us went in for the Miss Marina competition. And then the people that ran that asked us if we'd like to go on to the float for the Ramsgate publicity, which was then the Aqua Lovelies. In a lot of ways, it's as if it was only yesterday.
Yes, absolutely.
The friendships are solid, because although we don't see each other for a number of years, when we're together again, it's as if all those years between
have gone,
and we're back where we were, you know, teenagers.
During the 50 years since their Beach Beauty debut, each of the women married, and most have children and grandchildren. Now let's see more of Ramsgate.
And the local people ever since.
Yes, these days all that's left is a great big chunk of jetty, and they just don't seem to be able to shift it, at least until now, as David Forsdyke explains.
It's mostly seagulls who've been this close to the end of Margate Pier for the past 20 years. Once it was the boast of the south coast, a haven not for seabirds, but for holidaymakers. For more than 100 years, it was the main sea terminal for the steamers coming in from London and abroad. Road travel could take forever, but this Kent resort's investment in a landing jetty cum pier was the envy of every resort in the land. 20 years ago, a storm put pay to what was left of it. Repeated attempts by the army to blow it up failed. Finally, government and money arrived to rid Margate of its last vestige of a wrecked jetty. This is the end of the pier show.
It is part of Thanet, which is desperately in need of uplifting to try and help to improve the lot of all of those who live and work in the area, and to improve the leisure facilities, which are historically very important to Margate.
The wreckage of the jetty became first a hazard, then an unsightly blot on the seascape. The council here is spending millions in British and foreign money to have Margate recover some of the grace and beauty it once boasted as a top resort. For that to happen, the ironwork, which made its fortune, has to go.
We've learned to treat with a great deal of respect what our Victorian forefathers put in there. When they built it, it was built to stay.
At a cost of more than £300,000, a Norfolk firm is taking away every last trace of the pier. The job's been made more hazardous by the repeated attempts to blow up what was left after the storm of '78. It left piles broken and weakened, but after all, the men who built it left a legacy which has been difficult to crack. After 145 years, this is all that's left of Margate Pier. And come September, any trace that it was there at all will be gone for good. David Forsdyke off the coast at Margate for Meridian Tonight.
Destination Margate, Belle of Kent, situated on the flat, fertile land of the Isle of Thanet. A town where the old dwell side by side with the new, a town which in the 8th year of the reign of Queen Elizabeth I had no more than 108 inhabited houses and 8 inhabitants without a house of any kind. Today, many wonderful examples of varied kinds of architecture can be seen in the neighbourhood of Hawley Green and Hawley Square. On the 20th of July 1874, the Theatre Royal opened its doors for the first time. The building you now see took the place of the original theatre, built in 1786 on a piece of land which cost £80. Apart from a holiday resort, Margate is quite an important port. The harbour is the centre for quite a fair amount of riverborne traffic. Those who come here place great store on the words of the poet Inglesby, who said, "You should go down to Margate to look at the ships, or take what the bathing room people call dips." During the last war, because of its proximity to the French coast, calls were made upon the crews almost equal to those of the men in the front line. Like all stations in the British Isles, a complete state of preparedness always exists. Training is carried out at frequent intervals. As in all other fields of humane activity, they never know when the next call may be. Margate is the heart of what are called the 5-in-1 resorts. Here, flanking Margate, are 2 of them, Birchington and Cliftonville. Besides having wonderful beaches, Minnis Bay and lovely old world Birchington are still content to rely upon natural, unspoiled charm. A visit to the 800-year-old church is very rewarding. At Westgate, another of the 5-in-1 resorts, can be found delightful St. Mildred's Bay, which together with West Bay has a sandy foreshore washed by every tide. A popular centre for those who are young in heart is Westbrook Bay. Westbrook is virtually a children's paradise with playgrounds, roundabout swings and safe sea bathing. There's very little in life more wonderful than to see the happy, untroubled faces of children enjoying themselves. And along the promenade at Westbrook, bigger mounts are ridden against a background of flower-filled gardens and grassy-topped, flower-trimmed cliffs. A cross to the memory of St. Augustine stands for all to see. Not far from Margate is the famous historical town and port of Sandwich, with its ancient toll bridge, quaint old tortuous streets, ancient houses which give an insight into the town's dim past, which is said to date from the early 13th century. As does the history of Fortwich nearby, where the old town hall stands as it did in bygone days, and where relics of the past can be seen in a time when justice took the form of ducking stools, and where only a century ago a man was imprisoned for a year because he could not pay a debt of 30 shillings. A Viking ship tells the visitor that Kent is ever ready to remind him of its history. Just as magnificent, the Canterbury Cathedral does, the site of which dates back to the year 597. Palm Bay Cliftonville has a sun-decked restaurant built over the beach and sea. The popularity of this amenity can be gauged by the vast number of people who patronize it. Alternatively, visitors sit under gay parasols in the hot sunshine, giving point to the name Continental Cliftonville, which the resort is often called. The ever-popular Oval is another Cliftonville corner for relaxation. Whilst at the Lido, entertainment of diversified types is always on tap, catering for every possible taste. Here can be found the magnificent seawater tidal bathing pool, and though swimming is the order of the day in all pools, the wonderful surroundings, sun, sea and air make the Lido an attraction with a difference. Another difference is the bathing beauty competition regularly staged here. There is never any lack of feminine beauty. The main difficulty is always to select the winner. Which little number do you think should take the trophy? The little number I refer to, of course, is held in the lady's left hand. A little poise from number 23 goes a long way, maybe. I think English audiences are marvellous. I love you all. Well, she certainly cuts a good figure and actually was one of the winners. In this part of Kent, a Bay day is the natural order of things. Walpole Bay is another delightful retreat of soft golden sands and blue seas. Several times every week from the end of Margate Pier, a ship leaves for France, and a day abroad gives spice to the visitor's vacation. Boulogne is a most modern city. The multicolored posters advertise just as they do everywhere in France, lending to the general air of gaiety one always finds in that country. The shopping thoroughfares are wide and ranged by up-to-date shops and offices. Since the last war, building has proceeded apace to make Boulogne predominant among the premier ports in northern France. A short rest in order to take an aperitif at a pavement table and watch the world go by. There's quite a lot to see, and with 5 hours in which to do it, one has to take in a great variety of colour from window shopping, visits to the historical monuments and buildings of the city, whilst at the same time not forgetting to purchase a bottle of French perfume. One can certainly spend an enchanting afternoon, whether energetically inclined or not. Close by the quayside are new blocks of apartment houses, typical of the way in which Boulogne is being replanned. All visits, however, come to an end. Each of them will no doubt have a memory to take back, with many a story to tell of their trip to France, assuring themselves that one day they will return for a much longer stay. This is Dane Park, in which many a restful hour can be spent amongst the flowers and well-kept lawns. With 33 acres of winding walks, rock gardens and lakes, it's one of the finest examples of its kind. North Dean Park too has much to offer with its lily ponds, walks and floral displays. Kent is known as the Garden of England, and Margate does its part in no small measure to contribute to the full its quota of beauty. The heart of the resort's entertainment is the Winter Gardens, where in summer months famous orchestras and top caliber artists appear. Thank you, Dickie. This car registration number is familiar, not difficult to guess whose. Petula Clark, one of Britain's best-loved stars, she too is at the Winter Garden Theatre. And they certainly do come in their...
Fleet Street, where all my ambitions as a reporter once lay,